All right. Well, welcome everybody to this webinar. Thanks for joining today. We will be talking about how to bring SAP data into Microsoft Fabric for a modern data architecture. My name is Christoph Schuler. I'm the general manager with Theobald Software based at our Seattle office in the US. And I've been with the company for about 10 years, and I've spent a good portion of my career in this SAP integration area. And I'll be leading you through the contents of this presentation today for the next about 30 minutes or so. So let's take a quick look at our agenda. I'll start with a brief introduction of who we are, Theobald Software as a company, in case you haven't heard of us. Then we'll be looking at some challenges, some common challenges our customers face when they look at SAP data integration. We will then talk a little bit about Microsoft Fabric and some of the integration options that customers have to integrate SAP data into Microsoft Fabric, and then how our solution Xtract Universal can help you achieve your goal of replicating SAP data into environments like Microsoft Fabric. We will then finish up with some next steps, as well as we will have time for Q&A. So I would ask that you please hold your questions. Actually, you can type them into the Q&A area of the webinar control. I will get to it towards the end of the presentation. So a little bit about Theobald Software. We've been around for about 20 years, and we're a software company, an ISV specializing in SAP integration. We have around 60 employees in total, most of them at our headquarters in Stuttgart, Germany. And then we also have a team here in Seattle where we take care of our customers and partners in the Americas. Globally, we support about 1,800 active SAP customers across all industries, large and small, and they have one thing in common: they all run SAP, and they have a need for SAP data outside of the SAP ecosystem. We also work with partners. First and foremost, we're an SAP partner. We're a certified SAP partner, but we also partner with all the companies and platforms where we help customers integrate data into. So that includes Microsoft. That also includes vendors like AWS, Snowflake, Databricks, and many others. So why do customers like to work with Theobald Software? There's a couple things I want to highlight from this slide here. One of the things we hear quite frequently from customers is that they're really amazed at how quickly they can deploy our tool and configure it and be up and running with their SAP data pipelines within just a few hours or within a few short days. We go to great length, I think, in our product development to make sure our tools are easy to use, quick to deploy and use. And you can also fully automate your data movements from SAP into, let's say, a Fabric environment. We will see this in the demo later, how the automatic data synchronization can take place, while at the same time we give you enough monitoring to make sure you can act and do something if needed, if something goes wrong. Our tools are also very flexible in terms of what type of data you can access in SAP. We support all common SAP applications, all modules, and we help customers replicate the data into all kinds of different analytics and cloud and data platforms. The last 2 points are also very important for customers. We are SAP certified. We're compliant with SAP's guidance. We make sure the data is safe. We make sure users only have access to the data that they're permitted to in SAP. So that's another very important topic that is reflected in our solutions. If we talk about some common challenges that customers face with SAP data integration, there's a few that come up quite frequently. For instance, there's the sheer volume of data that customers have in SAP represents challenges. We're talking about millions of records, hundreds of millions of records, maybe billions of records that need to be replicated into other environments. With that comes the challenge of the data transfer speed. How quickly can I do that? There's also cost involved. There's a load on the SAP system that happens when data is replicated. And then on the other end, we have the requirement of the business users. They want the data as up to date as possible. So this notion of real-time replication or near real-time replication is very important to our customers. And another one I added here that has become more in focus recently is about SAP compliance. SAP came out with this ODP note that is mentioned here, which restricts the use of certain interfaces in SAP. Over the years, over the 20 years that we've been in business, we have supported a variety of interfaces in the SAP environment, including the ODP interface. However, in our tool set, it has only it only plays a limited role. So specifically what SAP is restricting here is the access to the ODP framework. ODP is for operational data provisioning in SAP over the RFC modules. And that's one of the components we have in our tool set, but we have several others. In fact, there's 11 other components that fall outside of this realm of this ODP note. So we offer customers other options. We do want to make sure customers stay compliant with SAP, and we do want to offer all of that on a certified technical foundation. So let's talk a little bit about Microsoft Fabric. Microsoft Fabric, for those of you who have already looked at it, provides you with an environment for all kinds of use cases or workloads in one place. It's a platform for different types of users, all kinds of data professionals, data engineers, data scientists, all the way to the business users that need to work with data. And one of the advantages that Fabric offers, it has one underlying data store, and that's called OneLake. And in OneLake, you can store one copy of your data for use with multiple analytical workloads. With our solution, Xtract Universal, you can unlock your SAP data and move that data directly into OneLake. And one of the key advantages of this approach is you extract the data once from SAP, you replicate it into OneLake, and then from there, you can share it across the different workloads and the different personas, all working within Fabric on the same data set. Now, there's one integration into Fabric in particular that I want to highlight and also demonstrate to you in the live demo later on, and that's about Microsoft Fabric Open Mirroring. That's a feature in Fabric that Microsoft has developed and opened up for vendors like Theobald Software to enable automated data synchronization with third-party systems like SAP. And the way it works is, you see on this diagram, once the data is extracted from SAP through a tool like Xtract Universal, it will be replicated into what Microsoft calls a landing zone. And we provision the data in a specific format that Microsoft understands and can work with. And then Microsoft can replicate this data into actual tables in the mirrored database. And one of the advantages of this approach is that it works really well for change data capture data. So we provide the technology to identify only the data that has changed in SAP through our table CDC mechanism. We then put the data into the landing zone, augmented with metadata to make sure it can be processed properly into the mirrored table. And then in that way, you don't have to replicate full data sets over and over. You only replicate what has changed in SAP, and Microsoft, through the mirrored database functionality, makes sure that the data is merged into existing data sets. So this enables fully automated near real-time replication, continuous replication of SAP data sets into a database table, a mirrored database table in Fabric. And I'll show you in the demo in a few minutes how exactly this works. So let's talk a little bit about Xtract Universal. Xtract Universal, you can think of it as an extract and load solution for SAP. We work with all kinds of SAP systems, from even older SAP ECC systems all the way to the latest S/4HANA releases in different deployment modes, whether that's on premises, private, or public cloud. We do support all of that. We also work with SAP BW systems, BW for HANA. We work with SAP DataSphere and BDC. We also work with other ABAP-based systems like SAP APO, BPC, or SAP Concur. Now, Xtract Universal has a collection of what we call extractors or extraction types. You see them in the middle of this diagram. There's a total of 12 at the moment. And I already touched on the ODP restriction a little bit. You see we have one component here. It's called ODP RFC. This is actually the interface that SAP has restricted. So we are now guiding our customers to use the other components, table CDC, the report component, for instance, but also our newer OData connectivity solutions that are not impacted by the ODP node. Together, these components enable both full and delta replication from SAP into the Microsoft Fabric environment. And another question we often get is around licensing. Do I need any additional licensing in SAP to do this, to replicate data? If we're talking about replication from an ERP system, you do not need any additional licensing. The tool works with all common types of cloud environments. Today in this webinar, we're featuring Microsoft Fabric with OneLake and mirroring, but we also work with SQL Server or Azure SQL Server, Azure Data Lake Storage, Azure Synapse. We have a direct integration with Power BI. So we try to satisfy multiple use cases depending on where you want to work with the data. All of this sits on a certified foundation. That product is called ERP Connect, and that was just recertified a few months ago by SAP. So with that, with this brief intro about Microsoft Fabric and our integration solution, let's jump into a demo to see how it works. I will share my screen here. Okay. What you see on my screen here is the Xtract Universal tool. The tool installs on a standard Windows system. Typically, we recommend a standard Windows server that you can host on premises or within your cloud provider of choice. And the tool has a front end, which is called the Xtract Universal Designer that you see here. On the main screen in this table, every row represents a data extract. And a data extract is basically defined by three things. The first thing is a source. Source is always SAP for us. We're specialized on SAP data replication. The second thing is you pick a type of data extract. That's one of the 12 different extraction types that we have, and a specific object for that. So if you choose table, you then, in the next step, choose one or more related tables. And the third step, or the third thing that defines a data extract, is your destination. Where do you want to load the data to? Where do you need it to work with the data? To define a data source, you simply click on source. And if I look at my S/4HANA source, for instance, here, I can set up this connection using typical SAP connection parameters. I have an application server or a host, an instance number, client, and the language. I need to authenticate in the context of a user. We also support single sign-on through what's called secure network communication. And we also support OData. So there's two protocols for how you can connect to an SAP system. One important note here, we always connect at the application layer. That's one of the reasons why there's no additional licensing needed. This user that you use to connect to SAP has to be licensed, but we don't access SAP at the database level, for instance, which would come with other challenges. So it's always at the application level in the context of a licensed SAP user. I can test my connection here and then move on to the next step to create an actual data extract. And by the way, you can have connections to as many SAP systems as you like here. Customers have many SAP systems, many different instances. Typically, they have non-production, QA, production, sandbox environments. So you can connect to all kinds of environments that you may need. To set up a new data extract, I select my source. Let's say this S4HANA system. And I'm just going to give this a name. I'll call this demo extract. And I will choose a table data extraction for this initial demo. Also on the left, you see how you can categorize your data extractions, organize them into folders and subfolders. You can freely define this according to your own needs. This is just an example organization that you see here. Some of our customers have hundreds or more than 1,000 or 2,000 data extractions. So this is a really nice way to keep them organized. Now, in the next step, I select a table, and I'm going to select sales table. If I don't know the exact name, I can work with wildcards to find a table. A little bit of SAP knowledge is helpful here. If I'm interested in sales data, I can, for instance, look at table VBAK, that's sales document header data. You can now see on the right-hand side all the fields of this table. By default, all of them are selected. I can extract everything, or I can be very specific and select only certain fields. And as I do this, I can already do a row count to see how many rows are in this table. I can also do a live preview. We now have a direct connection to our S4 system. And as you can see, this table data extraction is very performant. It also scales well across wider tables with many columns, also with quite a large data volume. I can add related tables. Oftentimes you have SAP data distributed over multiple tables. So here I want to bring in the related item table, sales document item data. That's VBAP. I can now toggle between these two tables, add some more fields here. You can see in my preview below, this creates a combined data set of fields between these two tables. And I can again do a live preview and a row count to get a preview of my data extract. We automatically join these tables based on our knowledge of how these two tables are related. That's by default an inner join, but you can look at that join condition here and change it if you need it. And last but not least, you can also filter your data. This also happens just like the join. This happens inside the SAP layer, inside the SAP application layer. So it has very good performance characteristics when you join tables or you filter the data set by certain criteria. Here, I could use, for instance, a record creation date or field ERDAT as a filter. So I could have a query that says, okay, only give me the records that were created after a certain date. This could be a fixed value. You could also pass a parameter in at runtime. That makes it a dynamic filter. And we also support expressions. So you could say, check today's system date. Today is December 12th. Subtract 30 days from that. So you could always have the last 30 days from today as your filter. And with that, with just a few clicks within a few minutes, I have a data extract ready. The last thing I have to do is pick a destination. Where do I want to work with the data? We support over 20 different destinations, everything from flat files to traditional database environments like SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, to more modern data platforms like Microsoft Azure, including Fabric, but also Snowflake. We support AWS and a few others that you see here. So what I want to show you now is another feature, and that relates to the table CDC component. Table CDC works very similar to the table extractor that I just showed you. Let's call this one CDC, demo CDC. It works very similar in that I need to pick a table. And for my S4 system, I'm picking if I want to check, let's say, customer data or vendor data, I'm picking a table which is used in S4HANA for business partner data, like customer master data. And that table is called BUT000. You see the description here, business partners general data 1. So with this, I would now track any changes to a customer record or a vendor record, really any business partner record in SAP. And you see here, right now, the tool tells me the state of this change tracking is not initialized. So that's something I have to take care of first. And once I do that, once I initialize, there will be a log table in SAP that will track the changes. And then over here, I can, again, select the fields that I want to replicate for my changed data. Yeah, we will track the changes on any field. We will always do that. But then here you specify, okay, when I do my extraction, when I retrieve the changes, what fields do I want to include there? And this data extract, I'll cut this short just a little bit. I've already set this up. You see here customers BUT000. This has a source system of S4HANA. It's a table CDC extractor. It has been initialized. I did a first run extraction already. And so now this is initialized, excuse me, meaning that changes are tracked in SAP. So every time there's a change on a business partner or a customer in SAP, we will be able to pick it up here every time we run this data extract. And then my destination is a Fabric mirror. Fabric mirror, I'll show you quickly how this was set up. To set up the Fabric mirror destination, you need to provide authentication parameters for your Fabric mirror. You can find this in the Fabric environment. And this can be either a tenant ID and client ID based on OAuth or a service principal. And then it's as simple as specifying what's called the landing zone here in this area of the screen. The landing zone you will find in mirroring. Let me go back to my demo workspace briefly. So here I have a mirrored database, which is called SAP data. And when you set up a mirrored database, you automatically get this landing zone URL. You see here at the top, right next to the ID of the mirrored database. So what you do is you simply copy the URL of this landing zone and you paste it in here in the destination configuration in Xtract Universal. So that's the setup. And then you can also specify what table name do I want to use in my destination. So currently I'm using the same as my extraction name. So that's customers underscore BUT000. But you could also use a custom name if you want something different. So every time I run this, the data is extracted from SAP. Xtract Universal will check, have there been any changes in SAP? And if so, let's replicate them into the landing zone in Microsoft Fabric. So on this run, I had 0 changes in SAP, so nothing was replicated. Let's go back to our analytics view here. You see I already have the table replicated. That was based on my initial load. And with the last run, no changes were detected, so nothing was replicated. So what we're going to do now is introduce a change in SAP. For that, I'm logging onto my S/4HANA system. And I will make a change to this customer or business partner. That's transaction BP. And I'm going to use this one. Okay, it's called Fit Cycles Incorporated. Once I click on it and go into change mode, I can make changes to this customer. Maybe I want to just shorten the name here and save it. Okay, so now we made a change to a customer record, a business partner record. If I run this replication now, it should detect at least one change. Okay, there it is. So it found the record that has changed. It will also log that. So you also have an audit trail always. And what we have done now, what the tool has done now, it placed the record into the landing zone. And Microsoft Fabric now automatically merges this record into the existing table. You see here, when I'm in the mirror database, you have an option at the top here. You could stop the replication. Usually it's always on, and you continuously replicate data. As soon as something shows up in the landing zone, it gets replicated and merged into the tables. And we should see a table here, which is called customers BUTT0. There it is. And we should see the updated data record in here. So this is near real time as this data replication happens. And you don't have to write any scripts or any notebooks or anything to pick up the data and merge it into an existing data set. That's one of the nice things about open mirroring. It does that all for you. And together with our tool, we give you reliable change data capture from SAP. So that enables near real-time replication for your SAP tables. And this works not just for customer tables or master data tables, but also for transactional tables. Okay, so I will stop sharing here and go back to my slide deck. So to just recap what we just saw, Table CDC is really a key component that works really well with Microsoft Fabric mirroring. It enables near real-time replication of changes from the SAP system. We will detect if there's a new record in SAP, if a record was changed or deleted, and then we will replicate that accordingly over to Fabric mirroring. The functionality underneath Table CDC is very similar as you might know it from SLT, SAP's Landscape Transformation Server, without the need to license or configure SLT. It's completely based on our own functionality, so you don't need to worry about the licensing or configuration implications of SLT. Okay, so with that, I would like to wrap it up. I see there's a few questions, which I will get to in a moment. I also would like to point you to some of our reference customers. You will find these on our website. We have customers in all industries. These tools work very generically across a wide range of SAP systems and releases and different use cases. And you see some customer examples here. And again, on our website, we have more customer references, as well as success stories of specific use cases and implementations. As a next step, I would encourage you, if you want to read more on this topic, scan this QR code. It will point you to a white paper on SAP data integration into Microsoft Fabric. Feel free to reach out to us or me directly. We are happy to give you some guidance, some references, share our experience, and enable you with a trial version. So we offer that at no commitment for 30 days. You get the full functionality, all the extraction types, all the different destination, not only Fabric mirroring, also Fabric OneLake, plus all the others that I showed today. And we're happy to support you in your trial. So with that, I will wrap up the presentation and we'll get to your questions. Okay, there was a very specific questions around exposing a parameter value to the custom destination using a script. So we have some support for scripting and script expressions in destinations. It varies a little bit from destination to destination. So I would like to follow up with you if there's something specific you're looking for. So let's take this one offline. Again, we have some scripting capabilities, but it depends on the destination. For instance, if you're working with a file-based destination, you can script things like folders, but it varies from destination to destination. Similar question, there's a setting we have in our tool called the column name style. And if we have any plans to create prefix code text entry, that should be there. So for everybody's benefit, the column name style is a setting in our tool where you can specify what the column headers in the destination should look like. By default, that is the technical name of a field in SAP. That's usually an abbreviated name. But you can append the more user-friendly description or just use the description. So that's a setting in our tool. Okay, so that's also something I would get back to you, Louis, on that one. I have to double check. Yeah, but thank you for that question. Another question came in around specific SAP roles. Do you need any specific SAP roles to enable CDC logs? Yes, so there are certain permissions required in SAP to support the CDC function. We do have to create a log table. There's a few things that need to be enabled. And we have that documented in our online help. You can also download a default role that can make it easier in some cases just to set that up. But yes, the permissions in SAP need to be there, and in some cases may need to be adjusted for your CDC tracking. Then another nice question is here from another user. Are there SAP consumption charges or other costs from SAP to run the mirroring? There's not. So it does not involve BTP. It does not involve BDC. So there's no consumption charges. You're basically accessing your SAP source system. That's typically ECC or S/4HANA. And then we replicate the data directly into mirroring. So only S/4HANA or ECC matters, and there's no consumption charges in those environments. There's also no consumption charges on our side. We have a licensing model around Xtract Universal that's based primarily on the instance or the server, the number of servers that you use to run Xtract Universal. And then we also have a component for our licensing around defined extractions, yeah? But no consumption units from SAP. For CDC, if you're not checking mirroring, the deletion flag, will the row be removed from your mirror table if a vendor is deleted? Yes, we do get that question, and yes, deletes are supported. Oftentimes, SAP does not allow deletes in certain tables. So records could also be flagged for deletion. That's often the case for master data, for instance. In that case, the row is not physically removed from the table. And in that case, we would also not send a deletion flag over to mirroring. So that would have to be treated differently. Is it possible to automate the Xtract Universal extracts, or does the run button need to be clicked? Yeah, I didn't mention that during the demo. Thanks for that question. Definitely, you can fully automate the extractions. We have command line interface, a stable command line interface that allows you to do that. You can also automate through calling of a URL. So customers use different environments and tools to do that. Some use their ETL tools of choice. Others use automation tools like Control M. Others prefer scripts, PowerShell scripts maybe or something. So the bottom line is, yes, you can fully automate that. And not only can you automate, you can also completely monitor the data extractions. Is something still running? Has it finished? If it has finished, was it successful? Was it not successful? So that's all built into the tool and also available through APIs. So you can use your preferred tool for monitoring and automation. And one more comment there. I also didn't mention this during the demo, but you would, in like a production type environment, you would put CDC and replication on multiple tables, and you determine how often you pull those changes. If you have a transaction table, that could be potentially every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes because there's changes happening all the time in SAP, and you want to do a frequent data pull to keep the data in sync. But you might have other tables where the data is more static. Let's say a customer table or a materials table. Those you may not have to replicate that often. And you can define table by table how often that replication and change data pull should happen. So that gives you the flexibility to do this on a table by table basis. For clarification, the mirroring is a pull via Theobald that needs to be run for updates to occur. My understanding is that some data sources push changes to the mirror in near real time. Yes, so we would actually consider this a push in our model. The trigger is external, as we just talked about when we talked about automation. So you use an automation trigger, an automation tool to trigger the data extract. Again, that could be every 5 minutes, every hour, however often you want. And then once the data extract runs, we push the data into the landing zone of the mirror, and then there it gets processed by Fabric. So from our point of view, it's considered a data push. How would it be set up in SQL? SQL is another destination in our solution portfolio. You would basically set up a one-time configuration to your SQL Server database, whether that's local or in Azure. You have to authenticate, similar to how you authenticate in Fabric. And then for database environments, we also have some settings. So you can have control over what happens during the load process. Do I want to truncate the table first before I load the rows? Do I want to delete a table or create a table if it doesn't exist on the first run? So there's quite a few options for that. And that makes it a nicely integrated story with SQL Server. And I'm happy to follow up with you with some documentation for how that works. If moving from ECC to S/4HANA, will all the connectors need to be rebuilt for the new source? That's a good question. Typically, you have to at least look at them and maybe make some modifications. There's definitely some changes from ECC to S/4HANA. In some cases, SAP has introduced entirely new tables. In the finance area, for instance, AC Docker is now a key table in S4HANA that didn't exist before. The example that I showed you with table BO2 BUT000 is also a new table in S4HANA. Previously, it was more around KNA1 in ECC. But many other tables still exist, like the sales tables, the VBAK, VBAP that I showed. But it is likely that SAP has maybe added some fields. And so you definitely want to look at that as part of your migration. We have a refresh metadata option in the tool where you can pull in the latest metadata for a table, including any fields that maybe SAP has added in S4HANA, and then you go from there. Is there a version control capability in the tool for multiple devs to maintain branches? Yeah, so the way it works is all the configured data extracts are stored locally on the server in the form of files. Yeah, they're primarily JSON files. They store the connections, the table definitions, the extraction definitions, all of that. And it's what you can do is put some kind of tool around that, like Git, for development, to manage changes, to do version control, to help your migration from one system to another. So we have some customers that do that, and because it's a file-based configuration, that works quite well if that's something you want to do. We don't have anything built in around version control, but we work with those common tools like Git. Okay, one more question. Can you please enable function modules specific settings when a select is performed? Recently, I noted that I cannot filter the client mandant columns anymore. Okay. That's something I need to take back and get back to you. I'm not familiar with that change, but I'm happy to take that back with our technical team and get back to you. Okay, got a couple more. On CDC table, when I edit the extractor, is there any chance to add calculated dynamic columns from values coming from the extraction parameter? We don't support calculated columns. We basically, you can take all the columns that are available in SAP and we replicate those. So there's no ability at the moment to do a calculated or dynamic column. The only feature we have is related to field exits, or ABAP, I think they're called field conversion exits or conversion routines. So if something like that would exist at the table in the SAP system, then we would be able to invoke it, but not otherwise. Okay, how does open mirroring works related to insert, update, delete flags, and load date and time passed in the parquet file of the landing zone? Yeah, so basically, open mirroring requires any third-party solution like Xtract Universal to provide the files, the change data files, in a very specific format, and that's defined by the open mirroring environment. And that's how we place the files in the landing zone. So there's the data itself, of course, that's dropped as parquet files, and then there's some additional metadata around that to describe the data. And in the case of mirroring, we also add the change flags. So I for insert, if it was a new record, U for update, if it was changed, and if SAP allows it, deletion flag if the record was removed. And we give that to the open mirroring interface in a very specific format. One change we're working on, one enhancement, is to actually keep that change flag on the record set. Now, we had some customers ask for that because they don't just want the mirroring to merge the data into an existing data set. They would actually still like to see that change flag and the timestamp. That's something we capture from SAP when the change happens. And so that's an enhancement we're working on to keep that in the data set. So you can do your own post-processing or have your own logic on the change records if you need it for some other function. Okay, I think we got through all the questions. Thank you very much for the questions. I really appreciate all of that. And of course, we're still available after this webinar to answer your questions. You'll get a follow-up. Feel free to reply to that, reach out to us, or reach out to me directly. And with that, I want to thank you for attending this webinar and hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.